Somewhere in the deep silence of space, something is transmitting. Not the static hiss of a dying star, not the rhythmic pulse of a spinning pulsar. Something stranger, something that follows patterns too precise to be natural, yet too alien to be fully explained. Something that, in some cases, appears to have been aimed directly at us. For decades, scientists have pointed their most powerful instruments at the sky and listened. And what they heard changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. Some of these signals arrived once and then vanished forever. Some repeated themselves with terrifying regularity. Some were so mathematically structured that entire teams of researchers were left shaking their heads, unable to offer a clean explanation. And some were detected not from the distant cosmos, but from places so close they made the hair on the back of every scientist's neck stand on end. The people who study these signals are not conspiracy theorists. They are radio astronomers, physicists, and engineers who have devoted their careers to understanding the universe through the language of electromagnetic waves. These are serious professionals with serious equipment and serious reputations to protect. And yet, when asked directly about certain signals, signals that remain unexplained after years of investigation, many of them pause longer than you would expect before answering. What are these signals? Where do they come from? And why, in some of the most haunting cases, do they simply stop? As if whatever was sending them suddenly became aware that someone was listening. These are some of the most disturbing signals ever received. On the night of August 15, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio was quietly doing what it always did, scanning the sky, logging data, looking for anything unusual buried in the noise of the universe. The telescope was called Big Ear. It was part of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and on that particular night, something extraordinary passed through it. Astronomer Jerry Eman was reviewing the printed data printouts a few days later when he saw something that stopped him cold. A narrow-band radio signal, broadcasting at almost exactly 1,420 megahertz, a frequency so significant it has its own name in science. It's the frequency at which hydrogen atoms naturally emit radiation. It is the most abundant element in the universe, and because of that, many scientists had theorized that any intelligent civilization trying to make contact would choose this exact frequency to broadcast on. It was, in theory, the universal channel. The signal was not just on that frequency. It was powerful, impossibly powerful for something natural. It lasted exactly 72 seconds, precisely matching the expected window that Big Ear's rotation would have aligned with any fixed point in space. It followed a perfect rise and fall in intensity, exactly the pattern you would expect from a genuine signal originating from a specific point among the stars. Eman grabbed his red pen and circled it on the printout. Next to it, he wrote one word: "Wow." That handwritten annotation became the name of the most famous unexplained signal in human history. Researchers immediately tried to find it again. They pointed every available telescope back toward the same region of sky, near the constellation Sagittarius. They listened for years, then decades. Over 45 years have now passed since that summer night in Ohio, and the wow signal has never been heard again. Not once. Every natural explanation that scientists have proposed has eventually been challenged or ruled out. A comet passing through that region was suggested in 2017, only to be widely criticized by other researchers who pointed out the signal characteristics simply didn't match cometary hydrogen clouds. No known satellite, aircraft, or Earth-based transmitter has been identified as the source. What's strangest of all is this. If the signal came from a genuinely fixed point in space, a star, a planet, a civilization, then it should have been detectable again. Signals don't just happen once if there's a permanent transmitter behind them. unless whatever sent it stopped. And that question, why did it stop, may be the most unsettling one of all.
If the wow signal was a whisper from the dark, then fast radio bursts are the universe screaming. First detected in 2007, fast radio bursts, or FRBs, are among the most violent and mysterious events ever observed in modern astronomy. In a fraction of a second, a single fast radio burst can release more energy than the sun produces in an entire year. They arrive without warning. They last milliseconds, and for years, no one had any idea what was causing them. When the first one was found, buried in archival data from a telescope in Australia, scientists initially assumed it was a glitch, an instrument error, a piece of equipment misfiring. That explanation lasted until more of them started showing up, then more, then dozens, then hundreds. Today, astronomers have catalogued over 1,000 fast radio bursts, and they come from seemingly everywhere in the universe, billions of light years away. Most of them are one-time events, appearing once and never repeating. But here's where things get deeply strange. Some of them repeat, and not randomly. Some repeat in precise patterns, with clock-like regularity. One source, known as FRB121102, has fired hundreds of times from the same location, roughly 3 billion light-years away. Another, designated FRB180916, repeats on a 16.35-day cycle with eerie precision. Active for 4 days, then silent for 12, then active again. A cycle, a regular repeating cycle, coming from 3 billion light-years away. The leading scientific explanations involve magnetars, exotic neutron stars with unimaginably powerful magnetic fields, or colliding dead stars, or bizarre geometric alignments between cosmic objects. These are serious, well-reasoned theories, but none of them fully explain the precision of the repetition patterns, and none of them explain why, in a handful of cases, the signal structure contains what some researchers cautiously describe as substructure. Internal patterns within the burst itself that seem almost too organized. Almost. One research team analyzing a repeating FRB noted that the signal contained what looked like organized frequency drifts, lower frequencies arriving slightly after higher ones in a pattern that some physicists quietly admitted reminded them of engineered wideband transmission. The paper was careful, the language was hedged, but the implication was there. Something is creating these bursts with enough regularity that they follow a schedule. Whether that something is a natural cosmic process we simply don't understand yet, or something else entirely. The universe hasn't told us. Not all disturbing signals come from space. Some come from right here on Earth, and manage to be just as unsettling. Since at least 1973, a radio station broadcasting on the frequency 4,625 kHz has been transmitting a continuous buzzing sound. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for over 50 years. It never stops. It buzzes, endlessly. And occasionally, without warning or apparent pattern, a Russian voice cuts through the static and reads out a sequence of numbers, letters, or code phrases, before falling silent again. The station has no officially acknowledged purpose. Russia has never confirmed its existence through any official government statement. But researchers, amateur radio enthusiasts, and journalists who have traced its signal have placed its transmitter somewhere near Moscow, though the location has apparently shifted over the decades. People who have devoted years to monitoring this station call it the buzzer. They track its every transmission, and what they've found is deeply strange. The voice messages appear to increase in frequency during times of international tension. During the Georgian conflict in 2008, the frequency of voice interruptions spiked. During heightened tensions in 2022, watchers noticed changes in the transmission pattern. These could be coincidences. They might not be. Some researchers believe UVB-76 is a military deadman switch, a system that remains broadcasting to signals that command structures are still operational. If the buzzing ever stopped, it could mean the command center was destroyed, triggering some kind of predetermined response. The continuous broadcast is, in this theory, not a message itself, but proof that the silence hasn't come yet. And then there are the voice messages, some of which have included phrases like Dalfa, Mikhail, Zenit, Yekaterina, followed by numbers. These are consistent with number station formats used during the Cold War to send encrypted instructions to field operatives, instructions that only the intended recipient could decode. In 2010, the buzzing briefly stopped. Listeners heard Russian voices in conversation, apparently unaware they were being broadcast, discussing mundane logistics. Then the buzzing resumed. That moment, those few minutes of accidental transparency, remains the closest anyone has ever gotten to understanding what this station actually is, and it explained nothing. A signal that has been broadcasting since before many of its current listeners were born, transmitting day and night without rest, with no confirmed purpose, no official admission of existence, and messages that have never been decoded by anyone outside the intended recipients. After 50 years, UVB-76 remains as opaque as it was the first day it buzzed. In 1998, astronomers using a telescope array in South America detected something coming from Epsilon Eridani, one of the closest sun-like stars to Earth, just over 10 light-years away. What they captured was a narrow-band signal that repeated with enough consistency to trigger serious investigation. What made this particular case unusual wasn't just the signal itself. It was the aftermath. The data was flagged, forwarded to verification teams, and then quietly disappeared from the official record. Not published, not officially refuted. Just gone. The researchers involved were reportedly told the source had been identified as interference, but at least two of them, speaking informally in the years that followed, expressed dissatisfaction with that explanation. Epsilon Eridani is one of the most studied stars in SETI history. It hosts at least one known planet. It sits in a region where liquid water would be theoretically possible under certain conditions. It has been the target of multiple formal listening campaigns over the decades, and it remains, despite all that attention, a place that generates more questions than answers every time someone turns a sensitive instrument toward it. The 1998 signal was narrow band, something almost never produced by natural sources. Natural cosmic phenomena tend to produce broadband noise across many frequencies. A narrow band signal concentrated on one precise frequency is considered a marker of artificial origin. It is, in the vocabulary of SETI research, one of the most meaningful things you can find. What was it? The official answer is interference. The unofficial murmurs from people who were there are something less settled. And because the data was never fully published, because the records were folded into institutional archives and never independently verified, this particular case occupies that most uncomfortable of scientific spaces. Not proven, not disproven, simply unresolved. In 1974, humanity sent a deliberate signal into space for the first time. It was transmitted from the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. A powerful burst of radio waves containing a simple binary message encoding information about humanity, DNA, the solar system, and the telescope itself. It was aimed at a star cluster 25,000 light-years away. It was, by any calculation, not expected to receive a reply for at least 50,000 years. In 2001, a crop formation appeared near the Chilbolton Radio Telescope in England. Alongside it, another formation appeared the following day. What those formations encoded, when analyzed in the same binary format as the original Arecibo transmission, was a response, a modified version of the original human message, with altered sections suggesting a different biochemistry, a different physical form, a different solar system. Scientists and researchers were split. Skeptics pointed immediately to human hoaxes. It would have required enormous effort and perfect mathematical precision executed in a single night in darkness. But determined artists have pulled off impressive feats before. The hoax explanation remains the most scientifically defensible position. But something about this case keeps drawing people back. The mathematical precision of the encoded changes. The fact that the formation appeared next to a working radio telescope rather than in some random field. The specific alterations to the biochemistry section. Not random, but internally consistent, suggesting whoever created the response understood what they were responding to. Hoaxers capable of that level of precision would be among the most sophisticated mathematical artists in human history, working anonymously, leaving no trace, claiming no credit. Maybe that's exactly what happened. Or maybe the signal that humanity fired into space in 1974 triggered something closer to home than anyone anticipated. Either answer is, in its own way, deeply unsettling. We have been listening to the universe for less than a century. In cosmic terms, that is not even a breath. It is less than the blink of an eye stretched across the face of a billion-year history. And in that tiny window of time, we have already collected signals that our best minds cannot cleanly explain. The wow signal arrived once, perfect and powerful, and vanished. Fast radio bursts repeat on schedules that challenge our models of natural phenomena. UVB76 has hummed for 50 years beneath the surface of official acknowledgement. Signals from nearby stars have slipped through institutional cracks, and the mathematics of the cosmos itself occasionally arranges into patterns that feel deliberately shaped. Scientists are careful people. They resist extraordinary claims because the history of science is littered with mysteries that turned out to have mundane explanations, and extraordinary claims that collapsed under scrutiny. That caution is not cowardice. It is the foundation of everything reliable we know about the universe. And yet, even the most cautious among them will admit, in quieter moments, that some of these signals genuinely resist explanation. Not just currently, possibly permanently. Because here is the deepest problem with signals. We can only understand them using the frameworks we already have. If a civilization a billion years more advanced than humanity decided to transmit a message, there is no guarantee that message would be recognizable to us as a message at all. It might look like noise. It might look like a natural phenomenon. It might look like something we've already catalogued, studied carefully, and quietly filed away as origin unknown. How many signals have we received and failed to recognize? How many times has the universe spoken directly to us in a language we haven't developed the ears to hear? The search for extraterrestrial intelligence assumes that intelligence, wherever it exists, would communicate in ways at least adjacent to our own. That assumption may be the most dangerous limitation we carry. Some mysteries remain unsolved not because the evidence is absent, but because the explanation, when it finally arrives, will require us to change something fundamental about how we understand our place in the universe. And that kind of change, the deep, structural kind, is the one that takes the longest to accept. We live on a small, warm planet circling an ordinary star in one unremarkable arm of a galaxy containing 400 billion other stars. Beyond our galaxy, there are 2 trillion more. The universe is not empty. It is electric with radiation, with signals, with information traveling at the speed of light across distances so vast that the numbers stop meaning anything to the human mind. And somewhere in all of that, in that unimaginable volume of space and time, something transmitted a signal that a scientist in Ohio circled in red pen and labeled with a single word of astonished recognition. Something pulses on a 16-day clock from 3 billion light-years away. Something has been buzzing on 4,625 kilohertz since before the internet existed, whispering encoded messages to recipients who have never been identified. We don't know what any of it means. Not fully. Not yet. Some of it may be explained by physics we haven't finished writing. Some of it may turn out to be the most extraordinary confirmation in human history. And some of it may remain forever at the edge of understanding, close enough to be compelling, too strange to be solved. But of all the things worth sitting with as you look up at the night sky, perhaps the most profound is this. We have been listening for less than a century, and we have already heard things we cannot explain. Perhaps the most disturbing signal isn't the one we've already received. It's the one that's already on its way. And whatever sent it knows exactly where to aim.